what was very clear to us when we were established in 2020 was that we would not be able to boost intra-Africa trade if the currency that we use to trade is a third currency, either the dollar, the euro, or the yuan. We also recognize that in the Abuja Treaty, and as we saw in the video, that establishing a common currency on the African continent is one of the main objectives that all of us have to work towards. So it is an ultimate objective expressed in the Abuja Treaty as we progress as a continent on our integration journey. We estimated, along with AfCFTA, as I said earlier, that it costs Africa $5 billion to buy the dollar or the euro or any other currency for trade. And this is a very, very significant constraint, particularly to small, medium enterprises. So in 2018, we went to the Assembly of Heads of States and Government and invited our heads of states to endorse the Pan-African Payment and Settlement System as one of Africa's payments platforms to enable payments in local currency. Now, in practice, what happens is that your central bank will grant authorization to your commercial banks to trade on the platform. Once the central bank has granted that authorization, all your commercial banks in that particular jurisdiction will be able to switch onto the platform and to trade, so that your customer as a bank has access to the entire continental market on a digital platform. The cost is a fraction of what you would pay for SWIFT or any other currency platform for trade. If you consider the fact that as Africans, in 2019 alone, we spent $20.5 billion on SWIFT, trading on SWIFT. So this is money that goes elsewhere. Now we will enable payment in local currency. The money remains on the African continent. Rather than going to a correspondent bank in London or New York, it remains on the African continent. The transactions are instantaneous. As I mentioned, the cost is relatively much lower. Your counterparty, if you are in Ghana, your counterparty is in Kenya. You trade using the Ghanaian cedi. Your counterparty immediately receives Kenyan shillings. AfCFTA has made available up to $4 billion to make sure that the settlements do happen, and the technology that has been developed, we are grateful to AfCFTA for this innovation. It is a very important political economy step that our continent has taken, and I believe, as was suggested earlier by one honorable member, that as we see these geo-economic shifts and these geopolitical tensions, payment sovereignty for the African continent becomes even more important, that we assert our payment sovereignty as a continent. And so this is how PAPS will be functioning. As I mentioned, 120 commercial banks are already trading on the platform, and 15 central banks. The collaboration with BRICS is done through the Office of the Chairperson. In fact, in the summit that was held here in Johannesburg last year, the African Union chairperson and myself were invited to participate, and we took the opportunity to share our own experience in terms of the Pan-African Payment and Settlement System. I am sure in the next summit of the BRICS, this matter will be discussed again. On the question of the competition authority and the jurisdiction and how the jurisdiction of the AfCFTA vis-a-vis the existing regional economic communities, it is indeed a very important question. What we agreed with, in consultation with all of the competition authorities of the African continent, is that where there is a competition matter that transcends regions, so if there's a competition matter between, let's say, the East African community and ECOWAS, that the jurisdiction of the Continental Authority would at that point be triggered by the trans-regional nature of the competition issue that arises. So the mandate, the full jurisdiction of the regional economic community shall remain. The regional economic communities shall convene, and in accordance with the protocol on competition, they shall establish a continental authority, which they themselves will appoint the board members, and it will have two representatives per region, because we were very, very conscious of the need to not interfere with a particular region's jurisdiction. Whilst on the issue of regional economic communities, again, if you refer to the Abuja Treaty, you will observe that ultimately the direction is establishment of a single market on the continent. Of course, we cannot deny the fact that regional economic communities exist. They play a very, very important role, for example, of boosting intra-regional trade. We've just heard of the example of competition authority. We seek to build on the progress made by the regional economic communities. And the AfCFTA is actually the overarching legal architecture that was missing. If you were trading before the AfCFTA between East and West African countries, you would have to use WTO rules for trading in Africa. In some cases, we would have to use rules of the economic partnership agreement that we have individually with the European Union. This, of course, was an absurd situation to be in. So the AfCFTA connects trade between the regional economic communities. Their mandate as a region shall remain. I do foresee that as the integration journey in Africa evolves, I do foresee that in accordance with the Abuja Treaty, there shall have to be a reconfiguration of the regional economic communities in accordance with the objective of the treaty. That, of course, will have to be done in a very politically sensitive manner, and to ensure that the mandate of the regional economic communities is appropriately tailored for the function. Some regional economic communities have actually been focusing, as you know, more on peace and security issues, some less so than others. We do have a structure that we have established of collaboration with the regional economic communities. All of the chief executive officers of the regional economic communities and ourselves, we do meet regularly to compare progress made, to learn from one another, and of course, to ensure that we move in the same direction. Regarding the issue of the African Union and Africa being able to finance her own development. Last year, the chairperson, His Excellency Musa Faki Mahamat, in his speech to the Assembly of Heads of States and Government, made note of the fact that over 60% of the budget of the African Union comes from outside partners. And as the AfCFTA, we are also affected by that. In fact, last year, our budget was about $1.2 million from member states to service 48 countries. Of course, it is not possible with that limited amount. We see increasingly the so-called development partners saying that we will support, but of course there's a huge political risk, and that is that you lose the independence of what you are trying to achieve if others are in a position to finance your own development. That is why the private sector in Africa is critical. Our African private sector has to step up to support the financing of development in Africa, including paying for the budget of the African Union to complement what member states are already contributing. So this is a matter that is very, very distressing and should worry all of us, that we run the risk of not being fully in charge of our own economic independence tools, which is what the AfCFTA is. But I'm happy that the chairperson mentioned this to the heads of states, that it reaches their attention. But I think we need to look at innovative ways, such as leveraging on the private sector in Africa. And we know that this is possible because if you recall, during COVID-19, Africa's private sector contributed over $250 million to vaccine acquisition and establish a common platform, which was chaired by my senior brother, Benedict Orama. So we know that there are ways in which we can include the private sector to finance our development as a continent. Then on the question, Your Excellencies, of value addition, local production, and by local production, of course, we mean the continent of Africa as a whole. That's what we mean when we are trying to create a single market. We have started very specific projects that will enhance and improve Africa's capacity for local production. I was just in Liberia last month. We are working, and this is by way of an example, we are beginning a work program with Liberia for identification of rubber processing capability so that Liberia can be self-sufficient in production of rubber, can connect to Africa's continental value chain for the auto sector to provide tires. We are also looking to see how we can work in the area of agro-processing. How do we create an agro-processing industry that is truly African and has a truly African footprint in nature to overcome this challenge of food insecurity in Africa? A few months ago, I was in Ethiopia. Ethiopia had a surplus of wheat, and yet we import wheat, soya, maize, and other grains, over $50 billion a year that we import these grains. But if you go up the road to Zimbabwe, to Zambia, you will find the wheat. So we have to focus on building a truly continental market that will enable local production for continental export for Africa's own food security.
Boosting intra-African trade is key to driving economic growth, reducing dependency on external markets, and increasing regional cooperation across the continent. Here are 5 key strategies to achieve this. 1. Implement the African Continental Free Trade Area. The AfCFTA, launched in 2021, is a game changer for intra-African trade. It aims to remove tariffs on 90% of goods, making it easier and cheaper for countries to trade with one another. Full implementation is essential as it will create a single market for over 1.3 billion people and encourage the flow of goods, services, and capital across borders. Government must streamline customs procedures, harmonize regulations, and invest in infrastructure to make this a reality. 2. Improve infrastructure. Poor infrastructure such as road, railways, and ports make it difficult for African countries to trade with each other. Investing in cross-border infrastructure will reduce transportation costs and delays, making it easier to move goods across countries. Initiatives like the Programme for Infrastructure Development in Africa, PIDA, are crucial for connecting Africa's region through better road, railways, and energy networks. 3. Diversify economies and value addition. Many African countries export raw materials and import finished goods, limiting the benefit of intra-African trade. Diversifying economics by promoting industries such as manufacturing, technology, and agriculture will create more varied goods for trade. Additionally, encouraging value addition, processing raw material locally can create high-quality products for the African market. For instance, processing cocoa into chocolate within Africa instead of exporting raw beans can boost local economics and increase trade. 4. Reduce non-tariff barriers. In addition to tariffs, non-tariff barriers such as complex regulations, border delays, and inconsistent trade policies hinder trade. Harmonizing trade regulation, standardizing product certification, and simplifying custom procedures would make it easier for businesses to trade across African borders. Governments should work together to reduce bureaucracy and adopt digital platforms for efficient cross-border transactions. And lastly, promote regional trade agreements and cooperation. Regional economic communities like the East African Community, Economic Community of West African States, and Southern African Development Community play a vital role in facilitating trade within regions. Strengthening these agreements and ensuring they align with the AfCFTA will boost trade within and across Africa's region. Cooperation on trade policies and dispute resolution mechanisms can foster smoother intra-African trade. By implementing these strategies, Africa can unlock the full potential of intracontinental trade, creating jobs, fostering innovation, and building resilient economies. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and share your thoughts in the comment box below. Until next time, cheers and have a good one.